Hello, juniors. Wanted to take a couple of minutes to walk you through this really short video clip around engagement essentials. You guys have a very important assignment coming up in the next couple of weeks that you're going to need to do some engagement, and some of the questions that are part of that assignment. We're going to talk about at least what some of those concepts are here as we kind of move forward. So just bear with me and we'll just kind of walk through this piece. It'll take us a few minutes, but I think it'll be very helpful for you as you prepare to do your learning integration assignment. First of all, let's talk about what strengths and barriers are. So as you can see the definition here, when we think about strengths, and so as you're working with clients or you're working with families, the first thing that you want to do is that social work is a strength-based profession. So you want to always look at the strengths that the client has. Of course, they have issues. Of course, they have other things that are going on in their lives, but they also have these things that are listed here. So these are some examples of what good strengths look like inside of a family system. So as you're doing your assessment, as you're thinking about your paper and your assignment you have to do, as you're thinking about how you engage with clients, period, these are just essential things that you'll need to know and understand in terms of doing the work. So the examples here, these are things that you want to look for when you are actually working with those individuals or when you're working with your families, because these are the things that will help guide you in terms of putting together goals and treatment plans that build on some of the existing strengths that families already have, even when they don't see them. Other end of the spectrum are your barriers. So you've got your obstacles that prevent movement, circumstances or situations that impede progress. So when you think about a lot of the things that people who are having difficulty or experience, some examples are clearly below here. Limited access to healthcare and cultural differences, poor education, chemical dependency. So those are things that you will also be looking at as you're doing your assessment with your families to get a sense of what the strengths are and what are the barriers or the things that impede them from moving forward. Quite important also is before you actually look at going out to do your initial engagement, there are some preparatory interview skills that you really need to familiarize yourselves with. So oftentimes reviewing the case, if you have the time and you have the case files prior to going to visit the family, to read up to see what kind of things are there. Doing some exploration in terms of asking some questions, thinking about what kind of questions do I want to ask this particular family as relates to the situation or the things that are happening for them. You always want to consult, so talking to a supervisor or another colleague before you're going out to kind of get advice. What would you do if you had a situation like this? This is the first time going in and meeting with this family, so you'll want to get some information from folks who've done it. You'll also need to be very careful in terms of arranging your time in your setting. If you've got people who don't speak English as a first language, then you'll probably need to look at whether an interpreter or something that might be needed, and that's going to take time to set up and arrange prior to actually being able to have the meeting. This whole concept of empathy, and so empathy is different than sympathy. Sympathy, you sympathize with a person's situations. Empathy is a way of you being able to reflect in your conversation and in your being with a person that you have some understanding about how they might be feeling at this given point in time. So it's a joining process. It's very powerful and really does move relationships along. Doing some self-exploration for yourself, what kind of things are conflicts for me? What kind of personal reactions might I have given some information I might have? So really to think about those things fairly thoroughly before you go and have that initial contact with the client. And then also I think it's very important to do the centering, organizing your thoughts, your feelings, your sensations. So as you're, getting ready to think about meeting with this client, your head needs to be clear. You need to be centered in terms of thinking about, I'm here for the purpose of assessing, engaging, and getting information from the client. Pretty much everything outside of that is a distraction. So being very aware of that. Also recognizing that in your relationship, that verbal communication is going to be very essential, but almost equally as essential is nonverbal communication. So what people aren't saying, what people are doing, what people's bodies are doing, where people are focusing their attention when they're talking to you, or are they talking to you at all? Those are all things that you need to take into consideration. And you have to just be naturally warm. So being who you are, I'm a caring, nurturing individual. And so when you talk to people, that becomes apparent as you're having the conversation. Again, the empathy we can't overemphasize enough. Being genuine. Don't be fake. Don't come in knowing everything and telling people that you're going to solve all their problems and make life all better, because that's not necessarily a reality. So just be genuine. Be who you are in that particular time and in that moment. Remember that clients have the right to self-determination. They have the right to work with us, or they have the right to refuse to work with us. And we have to be okay with any of that. I think also important in terms of the client relationship is you're looking for opportunities to empower the client to do the task at hand and not to necessarily do it for them. When you're looking at your interview or starting your interview, you want to make sure that you know what your purpose is. Why are you here today? What are you here to get or to obtain? What kind of time frame are you working with? Making sure that you explain your role. People don't know you from Adam, have no idea why you're there or what might be happening. So you have to be very diligent in terms of sharing that information. Encourage client feedback. So, as you are talking about the services that you possibly can provide, getting feedback from the client about whether this is something that might work for them, or are they understanding what the services might mean and how it could be a benefit to them, or whether it's not a benefit to them. Being useful in that interview, and then starting where the client is. So again, it's about paying attention to the surroundings, the environment, and whatever might be happening for the client will always take precedence over maybe what your particular agenda might be. So again, a way to let people know that you understand or have some idea about where they're at. It's important to make sure that we do a greeting, to make sure that you greet people based on what they would like, how they like to be greeted. For example, a simple way of being courteous is that, as you have the person's name, you're going to meet with them, asking permission. Do you like me to call you Mrs. Jones, or is Gwen okay? So you get to dictate that. Your attending skills, which we'll do some practicing on in class, which is really paying attention to the people that you are actually working with, paying attention to body language, paying attention to verbal expressions, tone qualities, nervousness or anxiety that person might be having, and really try to work to put those at ease. Your job is to really do the informing about the services and expectations, to offer the services, do an orientation, and then finally the dreaded paperwork. Also in the conversation, recognize, and we'll talk about these more in class as well too, there's some verbal responses that you can also make the process a lot easier in terms of being an encouraging person. So when people share with you things that are positive, use that as an encouragement, because a lot of times people are in such dark places when we're first working with them that they can't recognize when things are working well or they're not. Being able to rephrase things in a way that you understand. So if a client gives you some information, I really don't like my mom and she's a really not nice person. You don't know what that means. So actually having that particular person clarify. So tell me more about what that means when you said about how you get along with your mom. So don't just take it at face value, but also make the client explain to you kind of what's going on. Reflective responding, letting people know. So, after I've talked for a few minutes and they've been sharing to me things that are going on, I'll rephrase that and repeat it back to them. So I'm hearing you say that you're really struggling in terms of being able to get along with your mom, and this has been going on for the last several months. So again, that's people know that you are paying attention to what they're saying and you're listening attentively in terms of that, as well as providing information. So these are the skill sets that you are going to need to be able to hone. And these are going to be things that you'll have to be thinking about as you're looking at moving forward with your first major paper, because these are a lot of the scenarios and questions that you'll be asked to take a look at as you observe the video. So hopefully this will be of help to you. You can play it back as many times as you need to, and good luck on your assignment.